The first time my husband chose his mother over me, it happened in a hospital hallway, and it cost me everything I believed about love. I had just lost our baby. My body was shaking, my mind barely holding together, and I reached for my husband's hand. He pulled away. Not because he did not care, but because his mother was standing there, whispering something into his ear that made his face harden. From that moment on, my marriage stopped being ours. My mother-in-law did not scream or insult me. She was far more dangerous than that. She smiled. She cried in front of others. She told everyone she only wanted what was best for her son. And somehow, every problem in our marriage quietly became my fault. If dinner was late, I was careless. If my husband was stressed, I was ungrateful. If we argued, I was manipulating him. She moved through our lives like a shadow, rearranging conversations, twisting words, planting doubts. I started noticing how my husband repeated her sentences exactly, as if they were his own thoughts. Decisions we once made together were now discussed without me. Finances, holidays, even my medical choices. The worst part was how alone she made me feel while sitting at the same table. When I tried to defend myself, she played the victim. When I stayed silent, she claimed I was cold and disrespectful. Friends drifted away. Family stopped calling. And slowly, my husband stopped looking at me the same way. One night, I overheard a phone call that made my stomach drop. Her voice was calm, confident, and cruel. She was telling someone that our marriage would be over soon, and that everything was already handled. That was when I realized this was never about misunderstandings. It was a plan. And I had just uncovered the edge of a secret she had buried for years. I did not know it yet, but exposing it would destroy her perfect image, shatter my marriage forever, and change the balance of power in ways none of them were ready for. Because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. And I was done being silent. After that phone call, sleep became impossible. Every sound in the house felt staged. Every quiet moment felt like I was being watched. I started replaying years of memories with new eyes, realizing how carefully my mother-in-law had shaped every outcome. Nothing had been accidental. Not the fights. Not the distance. Not even my husband's sudden change of loyalty. The next morning, she arrived unannounced, carrying food and fake concern. She touched my arm like a saint and asked how I was holding up. My husband watched us closely, as if waiting for me to explode. I did not. That seemed to disappoint her. Instead, I listened. She spoke about family values, about sacrifice, about how marriages survive only when a wife knows her place. Each sentence felt rehearsed. And then she slipped. Just one small detail about a document she mentioned, something she should not have known about. My heart started racing. That was the moment I realized she had access to things that were never meant for her. Later that day, I checked our shared emails, old files, bank records, anything I could quietly review without raising suspicion. What I found made my hands shake. Messages forwarded without my knowledge. Appointments canceled using my name. Private conversations rewritten and sent to my husband with subtle changes that made me look unstable. She had been editing my life behind my back. The more I dug, the clearer it became. My marriage had not failed naturally. It had been slowly poisoned. Every argument had a seed. Every doubt had a source. And all of it led back to her. That night, my husband accused me of being distant. He said his mother was worried about my behavior. I looked at him and realized how deeply she had rewritten his reality. He was no longer choosing her consciously. He was programmed to. I decided then that emotions would not save me. Tears would not fix this. Confrontation would only make her stronger. I needed proof. I needed patience. And I needed to learn her game better than she ever expected. Because the secret she was hiding was not just personal. It was dangerous. And once it came out, it would not just ruin my marriage. It would expose who she truly was. The next discovery came by accident, and that was the most terrifying part. While cleaning the storage closet, I found a box my husband said belonged to his mother. Old papers, receipts, and faded envelopes tied with string. I almost closed it. Almost. Then I noticed my name written on one envelope in her handwriting. My pulse spiked. Inside were copies of documents I had never given her. Medical records, financial forms, even a handwritten note I once left for my husband during a difficult week. Seeing my private life arranged so neatly felt like someone had been studying me for years. That night, I followed a hunch and checked our home router history. It took time, but what surfaced made my chest tighten. Late-night activity from devices that were not ours. Logins from her address accessing accounts tied to me. She had not just interfered. She had monitored. I started realizing the truth was bigger than sabotage. She was controlling narratives, outcomes, even legal boundaries. And she was confident because she believed no one would ever suspect her. Then came the warning. My husband told me his mother suggested we take a break. Not counseling. Not space. A break that involved me moving out temporarily. He said it was for my own good. His voice sounded distant, rehearsed. I nodded, pretending to consider it, while my mind screamed. She was accelerating her plan. The next day, a woman I barely knew messaged me online. She said she recognized my name because it was connected to something from years ago. She hesitated before explaining, then sent a single photo. It showed my mother-in-law standing beside a man who was not her husband, signing documents in an office that specialized in settlements and silence agreements. The timestamp was from before my marriage. My hands went cold. This was not about control alone. This was about fear. She had something to hide, something so damaging that she built her entire authority on making sure no one ever looked too closely at her past. And somehow, my marriage had become collateral damage. I did not reply to the woman immediately. I needed to know how deep this went. I needed to know who else was involved. And most importantly, I needed to decide whether exposing her secret would save me or destroy everything left in my life. Because once I pulled this thread, there would be no turning back. The woman who sent the photo disappeared after that message. Her account went silent, profile wiped clean within hours. That alone told me I was standing too close to something dangerous. My mother-in-law did not just manipulate conversations. She erased people. I printed the photo and hid it inside an old book, my hands shaking as I slid it between the pages. That night, I noticed something else that confirmed my fear. My phone battery drained unusually fast. Apps opened without me touching them. Someone was still watching. At dinner, my mother-in-law spoke gently about forgiveness and patience. She smiled at me as if we shared a secret. When my husband stepped away, she leaned closer and whispered that fighting the family never ends well. Her tone was calm, almost kind. But her eyes warned me. I realized then that she knew I was digging. The next morning, I received an email from my workplace about a complaint filed under my name. The accusation was vague but damaging. Unprofessional behavior. Emotional instability. I understood immediately. She was building a record, a paper trail designed to discredit me before I could speak. I started backing up everything. Photos, logs, messages, files saved in places no one would think to look. Each piece felt like another second stolen from my life, but I kept going. I knew if I moved too fast, she would crush me quietly. My husband grew colder. He questioned where I went, who I spoke to, why I seemed nervous. He was not cruel. That hurt more. He was convinced he was protecting his family from a problem he believed I had become. Then I found the final link. A legal consultation invoice dated years ago, paid in cash, connected to a non-disclosure settlement. The name on it was not hers. It belonged to the man in the photo. And the case description hinted at fraud that reached far beyond family drama. She had not just hidden an affair. She had buried a crime. And now she suspected I knew. That night, as I lay in bed, my husband asleep beside me, I felt a certainty settle in. My marriage was already over. The only question left was whether I would walk away broken and silent, or whether I would burn the truth into the open and make sure she never controlled another life again. The countdown had begun. The pressure tightened the moment she realized I would not leave quietly. My mother-in-law began showing up everywhere. At my grocery store. Near my workplace. Even outside the gym I rarely used anymore. She never confronted me directly. She did not need to. Her presence alone was a reminder that she still believed she owned the board and all the pieces on it. Then my husband told me something that confirmed my worst fear. His mother had contacted a lawyer about protecting the family from potential accusations. He said it casually, as if it were a normal precaution. I heard the threat beneath the words. She was preparing to strike first. That night, I accessed an old cloud account my husband barely remembered. Inside were archived emails synced from years ago. Buried deep was a chain that stopped my breath. Messages between my mother-in-law and a financial consultant discussing asset transfers under false names. One email mentioned a witness who needed to be handled carefully. That witness had the same name as the man in the photo. I finally replied to the woman who had contacted me earlier, using a new account. She answered within minutes. She told me she once worked for the firm that arranged the settlement. She left after realizing how often certain clients made problems disappear. She warned me to be careful. She said my mother-in-law did not panic easily, but when she did, lives unraveled. The next day, my husband handed me papers. A separation agreement. He said it was temporary. He said his mother thought space would help everyone. I looked at the signature line with my name already typed and felt something inside me harden. This was not concern. It was removal. I signed nothing. Instead, I scheduled my own legal consultation using the evidence I had collected. When the lawyer looked up at me after reviewing the documents, his face changed. He said this was no longer a family matter. He said this was serious. As I walked out of that office, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother-in-law appeared on the screen, short and perfectly polite. She said we needed to talk before things went too far. She was wrong. Things had already gone far. And she had no idea how close I was to tearing down the story she had spent decades protecting. The real exposure was coming. And this time, she would not be able to rewrite it. The meeting happened in a quiet cafe far from our usual places. She chose it carefully, somewhere public enough to seem harmless and private enough to control the tone. When she arrived, she looked calm, confident, untouchable. The kind of woman who believed fear was something she created, not something she felt. She spoke first, telling me how much she had sacrificed for her family. She reminded me of everything she had given her son. Then she leaned in and warned me softly that accusations have consequences. Careers end. Reputations collapse. People stop believing women who appear unstable. I understood the strategy immediately. If she could not silence me, she would erase my credibility. I did not argue. I did not threaten. I simply listened and let her talk. Every sentence she spoke revealed more than she realized. Names. Dates. Small corrections she made too quickly. She slipped when she mentioned the settlement again, correcting herself mid-sentence, assuming I already knew details she had never admitted. I recorded none of it. I did not need to. That night, my husband confronted me. He said his mother felt attacked. He said she feared I was trying to destroy the family. I asked him one question that froze him in place. I asked him why she had access to my private accounts. He had no answer. The next morning, I found my car scratched, a deep line across the door. No note. No witnesses. Just a message without words. I took it as confirmation. The woman from the firm sent me another file. This one included internal memos and a timeline that tied everything together. Fraud. False identities. A payoff that prevented criminal charges years ago. And a list of people who stayed silent in exchange for protection. My mother-in-law's name sat at the center of it all. I forwarded the file to my lawyer. He responded with one sentence. This changes everything. That was the moment I felt the balance shift. She had spent years controlling my marriage through whispers and fear. Now the truth had weight. Now it had structure. And once it moved, it would not stop with me. My husband was already pulling away, confused and angry, stuck between loyalty and doubt. He did not know it yet, but his mother's secret was about to force him to choose. And when he did, nothing in our lives would survive the impact. The first official notice arrived sooner than expected. A certified letter addressed to my mother-in-law, delivered to our house by mistake. I recognized the sender immediately. A regulatory agency I had only learned about days earlier. My hands trembled as I held the envelope, unopened, heavy with consequences. She came that evening, unusually tense, eyes scanning the room as if searching for something already lost. When she realized I had seen the letter, the mask cracked. Just for a second. Fear slipped through. My husband noticed it too. That night, the arguments escalated. Not between her and me, but between her and her son. He questioned her stories, the timelines, the contradictions. She responded with tears and warnings about betrayal. She said I was turning him against his own blood. For the first time, he hesitated. The next days moved fast. More letters. Requests for records. Quiet visits from people who asked careful questions and took careful notes. My mother-in-law stopped calling. When she did appear, she looked smaller, controlled rage replacing confidence. Then she tried one last move. She told my husband I had manipulated evidence. She said I was seeking revenge for my failed marriage. She demanded he choose sides. Watching him struggle was painful, but it was also revealing. He began reviewing documents himself. He saw emails that were never meant for him. He noticed how often she had spoken for him without permission. The truth did not hit him all at once. It seeped in slowly, breaking something fundamental. One evening, he sat across from me and asked if everything was real. I told him nothing but facts. No emotion. No accusations. Just evidence. He left that night to confront her alone. When he returned hours later, his face looked older, heavier. He did not say much. He did not need to. The silence said she had finally lost control of the story she built. The investigation was no longer quiet. And the final exposure was only days away. The fallout was quiet at first, then unstoppable. Within days, the investigation became public record. What my mother-in-law had buried for decades surfaced piece by piece. Financial fraud tied to false identities. A settlement designed to silence a witness. Connections she had denied under oath. The image she built as a respected, untouchable woman collapsed under documents that did not lie. People stopped returning her calls. Family members who once treated her words like law suddenly questioned everything. Invitations disappeared. Whispers followed her wherever she went. The same tactics she used to isolate me now wrapped around her life, tightening slowly. My husband watched it all unravel with a mix of guilt and shock. He apologized, not with excuses, but with exhaustion. He admitted how deeply she had controlled him, how easily love had been confused with obedience. But apologies could not repair what had already been destroyed. Our marriage ended quietly. No screaming. No courtroom drama between us. Just the acceptance that too much damage had been done while his mother stood between us. Walking away felt less like losing a husband and more like escaping a prison I had not realized I was in. The final blow came when formal charges were announced. She tried to deny everything, tried to rewrite her story one last time. This time, no one listened. Evidence replaced emotion. Truth replaced fear. When she was asked to step down from community roles she once ruled, I felt nothing but calm. I did not celebrate. I healed. I rebuilt my life without manipulation, without whispers, without someone rewriting my reality behind my back. The secret she protected destroyed her, not because I wanted revenge, but because truth demands payment. She ruined my marriage believing I would stay silent. Instead, I exposed what she hid the hardest. And in the end, she lost everything she worked so hard to control, while I finally gained something she never had over me. Freedom. Subscribe for more interesting stories.